I'm feeling.
Welcome to Sports Bias Live with Cleveland J. It seems like it's been a while since I've had a show. I had to backtrack a little bit. So first of all, welcome to the show. If you are watching us or listening to us, feel free to comment in the chat. We have all kinds of stuff to say. I said this earlier on Facebook. I was not prepared to do this show in the sense that this was much harder than I thought it was going to be. Most of you know I spent a lot of time in Chicago, 30 years, and a diehard Cubs fan. But obviously I went to a lot of Sox games and have a lot of friends that are Sox fans. And when I started the show, I've told the story many times that I kind of had a whole bunch of people, or a small group of people rather, that I really wanted to reconnect with. Part of the purpose of the show and my pastor and professor show was to reconnect with people from my past that I really felt like I wanted to reconnect with. And when I knew I wanted to do a White Sox show, and that instantly brought me to Bobby Mack, who you're going to meet in a little bit. Bobby and I go way back to my first few days in Chicago, and we have a lot of great memories together, including several at White Sox games. So we're going to get into that. He's a diehard White Sox fan, so I can't wait for you to meet him. He's just coming off of St. Patty's Day, kind of getting a little bit of break. After that, he has a band called the Chancey Brothers, who plays like 14 shows in 2 weeks or something like that. So he's rested up and hopefully ready to go tonight. I do have some announcements, but what I was saying is this was much harder for me than I thought. I have all kinds to say, but what I was going to say, what I said on Facebook earlier was we got into kind of a heated debate, Scott and my buddy Kevin, on the Reds episode with my take about Pete Rose. And that was probably our most trafficked conversation and episode so far. In my take was, I'm a big Pete Rose fan. I grew up, playing like him, and think he should be in Hall of Fame from the hit standpoint. But if you take out his longevity numbers, his longevity records, like the hits and the runs and all that stuff, his numbers don't warrant him being in the Hall of Fame. Look it up yourself. Do your own, make your own conclusion. But batting average wise, I'll look it up. All the statistics that matter in baseball, as being a impact player, his numbers don't warrant it. So that was controversial. I get that. I'm right, but it was controversial. This episode, I have some other things that are going to probably shock some people. And I didn't anticipate this happening, and it was completely organic. And I think it's justified, but there's going to be some things that are going to shock some people, I think. But once you hear the justifications, you're going to be like, yeah, what are you going to do? So we'll get there. So I am excited to bring Bobby Mack on, but I do have a few announcements. I've had to change the schedule. If you've been following along, I had to kind of backtrack on some shows. I kind of went crazy when this show first started, and I tried to do the Super Bowl shows every day of the week of the Super Bowl week, and the NCAA tournament shows, which I really enjoyed, and the baseball preview shows. It was really taxing on me. I'm not quite ready to be at that level yet. So I'm going to go back to doing one show a week, except some one-off ones that I can pre-record. We may do, but it's just going to be one show a week until I can do something different. We do have some schedule changes. We are rescheduling the Cardinals episode originally for May 1st, but I think we're going to do that May 5th. or May 15th rather, the St. Louis Cardinals. Interesting. I'm going to be doing the White Sox and Cardinals in almost back-to-back shows. And then my beloved Cubbies is going to be on the 22nd of May 22nd. I'm still trying to work out the details on people joining me on that episode. I have a fun one coming up. One of the shows that I originally wanted to do. One of the things that I always love, marketing-wise, I love uniforms and looking at uniforms, which we're going to talk about tonight. Because we are going to do an episode. I'm looking at Bobby Mack in the green room, seeing his face when I say this. On June 5th, we're going to do the best and worst uniforms of all time. Obviously, the worst uniform of all time comes from this episode. And Bobby's laughing. And I hope he agrees. I mean, I'll be shocked if he doesn't. They wore shorts. The White Sox wore shorts one year. I mean, there were some other bad White Sox ones too, but they wore shorts. We'll leave it at that. So we're going to do that episode. I am going to do that episode with my kids. So Cubby and Juju will be joining me on that one on June 5th. We are going to get into another section of shows that I wanted to do starting on June 12th. We're going to take the numbers 1 through 10 and talk about the best player to wear the number 1. It's not going to be one dog, Lance Johnson, by the way. So we're going to do number 1 through 10. So the best players to ever wear number 10. Somebody's going to have to talk me off the ledge. Ron Santo, number 10. We'll see. So I'm going to go through 1 through 10 and tell you who I think is the best player to ever wear that uniform number. We're going to do, on June 19th, we're going to do an all Major League team. So the best lineup in Major League Baseball instead of doing individual teams. This is the number 1, our all-time lineup. And then we have a series of coming up that I don't have dates for that we're going to do the best position players, like the best second baseman of all time, best center fielder of all time. We'll switch to some football episodes in August. We wanted to try to do some around the draft, just with all the baseball stuff going on and my schedule. We couldn't do it then, so we're going to wait till, so football starts kicking off in August and September. So we'll get some football episodes going there. We got a Dallas Cowboys one coming with my buddy Doug. I'll do some a Browns one, which will be, I don't know. I don't even know if I can do a Browns one right now. I'm not even going to go there. So that's what we have coming up. A couple of other quick announcements. Speaking of Doug, we took a week off from this. So my Pastor and Professor podcast will air again this coming Wednesday. So Doug and I will be back and we'll dive into the third identity of the church on that one. And then also we released another episode of Heartbeat Radio late last week. It might get loud, and I'll have another episode dropping sometime this week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll have another episode. I'm going to keep it a surprise. Going to be a little bit of change of pace there, kind of like the Y Store one we did, but I have another one coming that's going to maybe a little out of the norm for me. So I have those coming up. Anything else on my list? I don't. I need a little bit of background music. We got to fix that, I think. I'm going to plug this in. And do a whole little bit of background music. But while I'm getting that, I am going to bring on my guests and introduce you to Bobby McNamara. Bob McNamara, welcome to the show. You might be muted there, but so welcome, Bobby Mack. It's a long applause.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me. I didn't know we were in front of a studio audience.
We are, yeah. You guys going to be a little louder? I have all kinds of sound effects. So sorry I had to throw the uniform aspect at you, but we're going to talk about uniforms.
Well, yeah. The White Sox they had a few strange uniforms back in the day.
That was Bill Veeck doing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it makes sense it's Bill Veeck. That makes sense. But those were awful. There's a lot of awful.
They also wore them. They also played that game at 10:30 in the morning. It was McDonald's had just launched breakfast on their menus, and it was the McDonald's breakfast game. It was a doubleheader, and the first game was at 10:30 in the morning, and they wore shorts. See, there you go.
Yeah, those weren't the only White Sox uniforms that were bad. But we're gonna talk about favorite White Sox stuff and including uniforms and stuff a little bit later. So yeah, welcome to the show, Bobby. I am so excited to have you on. I am so excited to kind of reconnect. We had a little bit of connection earlier in the week when we had our kind of pre-show call, and this was the thrill for me. I had talked about when I first started the show. I hadn't reached out yet, and I think you were watching one of the shows.
I was,
and,
yeah.
You commented, and that's kind of how I was able to ask you to come on the show finally. So tell me,
Yeah, because I was trying to think how long it's been since we've seen each other in person, but close to 15 years, I would think.
that's what I
So,
was. That's what I was guessing too. I left Chicago. Juju's 10, so about 10, 11 years ago, and I had totally forgotten when you said that you went to the same elementary school as my wife.
right.
And I
Yeah.
didn't remember you even
But
meeting
she's
her.
much younger than me, much younger than
Yeah,
me.
she's a little bit younger. Um, uh, are you a year older than I am, or a year younger than I am?
Uh,
I'm
I don't
afraid.
know. I'm not giving that up on the air. You know, I
Really?
mean, yeah. But you're 44, right?
Yeah. Yes. I'm 54. I'll just say that.
Yes, I'm a year older.
Yeah, I thought you were a year older. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I want to first of all, I want to know that first of all, that was cool. I totally forgot that you had met her and that you went to the same school. We I remember us seeing you now. You were playing on a bar on the north side, and I don't remember
Yeah.
what bar it was. I was trying to think of the name.
Uh,
It was an Irish
the
bar.
time that you guys came out, it was yeah, well,
Obviously,
it was Finley Dunn's, I believe,
yes, it was
on
Finley
Lincoln
Dunn's.
Avenue.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was Finley Dunn's. I was trying. I knew the name. I couldn't get there. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that. So
Yeah. Uh,
Bobby is a North Sider, and his family, most of his family, if not all, are Cubs fans.
no,
The whole
we are
family.
we're mixed family.
Okay, all right.
So my dad is a diehard White Sox fan.
Okay, that's where. All right.
He just passed away about 6 months ago,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know
and
that.
my mom is a lifelong Cub fan.
I
Um,
like your mom.
so yeah, so they. The funny thing is, my dad grew up at Wellington and Halstead, so he could walk to Wrigley Field,
Yeah,
and he never set foot in Wrigley Field. The first time and only time was 1989. The Cubs were in the playoffs, and he got offered some tickets from a friend, and he initially said no because he's not a Cub fan. And then he realized that maybe his wife would want to go to the playoff game, and that certainly before cell phones and everything else. So then he had to try to track the guy down and get the tickets. But that's the only time he's been there, and whatever. Back in when he was young, it was the Cubs and the Bears played at Wrigley Field,
right,
and the White Sox and the Chicago Cardinals
right.
football team played in Comiskey Park.
Yeah.
So he was and that's how it kind of was. You were Sox and Cardinals or Bears and Cubs if you go back far enough to that. And the reason why he was a White Sox fan was because my grandfather, who came from Ireland, was a Chicago fireman, and all the Irish Catholic firemen were all White Sox fans. And like a lot of people don't realize that Comiskey, that's an Irish name actually. It's Key, not Ski,
Yeah.
like a Polish last name,
Yeah.
and they were an Irish Catholic family that owned it. And the old joke, if you know Irish history between the Protestants and the Catholics, the old jokes were the Protestant cheers for the Cubs and the Catholics cheered for the White Sox.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how it played out. And then, yeah, I could go more into that, but we were a split family because of that. So
Yeah, your brother. I remember your brother being a Cubs fan, right?
my brother is a Cub fan, and yeah, so we actually, one of my early memories, I was probably 4 or 5. We were sitting around the kitchen table, and my dad had enough of all the bickering about Cubs and Sox. And he's like, we're going to have a vote, and you're going to pick your team right now, and that's going to be the end of it. And we went around the table, and I was the youngest. And I can remember my sister leaning into me because my brother was like, vote for the Cubs, and he's my older brother. There were just 2 boys and 5 girls.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do? And my sister leaning into me going, if you vote for the Cubs, Dad will never take you to a baseball game. And so I voted White Sox. And truth be told, my dad never took my brother to a baseball game. I got to go. We would go to opening day with one of his good friends, and my brother would be at home. So to the end, when the three of us would go to games. We went to a few Cubs White Sox games,
Yeah.
but if we were going to a baseball game, my brother had to come with us to the White Sox games.
Well, you and I went to several Cubs White Sox games as well.
We did,
Anytime there's a crosstown classic, I think we went and skipped work and had a few beers in the sun. And one of the things that came up in our pre-show meeting was Bob and I were at the Michael Jordan game, the crosstown. What they call that?
So that was it. Wasn't the crosstown? Well, they might have called it the crosstown classic, but that was before
interleague play.
And it was it was the end of spring training, and they played.
The season started.
They played. They would play each other, and they only did that a couple of years. But the one was at Wrigley Field, and Michael Jordan played.
Yeah, he was 2 for 3. I remember.
Yeah, didn't he hit a? Did he hit a home run?
It was foul.
Definitely.
I think he hit a triple, but he hit one that was foul.
Yeah.
I remember that. The thing I remember most about that game was how freaking cold it was.
Yes, it was cold. It was cold.
I went to a lot
but it was packed because everybody was there to see Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And anytime the Cubs and Sox played back then, when they did that, it was always packed.
Yeah.
But those games were always fun. I remember getting abused at Comiskey a couple times during those games. I remember Corey Patterson. I remember one of the Corey Patterson year games. And I was in the upper deck and just got. I was the only one up there.
You should have. Because you're a double whammy. You're an Indians fan or Guardians fan and a Cubs fan. So
it's funny you should mention that. You should bring up the Guardians, Bob.
Oh, let's not talk about it. We're here to do the White Sox thing.
I wish I would have thought about bringing my broom out.
7 in a row. I mean, come on.
Is that what they've lost?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Because they lost again today, and
don't worry, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think they will, but they've got a lot of injuries.
Yeah,
so
they
have had the last couple of years, and so you start to worry when that becomes a theme of a couple of seasons in a row. You're like, okay, is that something that's a little bit more institutional, that they're not take care of their players the right way? But
yeah, I have. I don't even know if I ever actually put this all the way out because I didn't finish all my baseball shows, but I had the White Sox and Mets in the World Series, with the Mets winning.
You're not alone. I'll tell you, it's hard though. As a you have the same thing both with Cleveland and the Cubs. It's hard to predict them to be winners when it happens so rarely. The White Sox have. They still need another starting pitcher if they're gonna.
I had the Sox last year too. Actually, I had the Sox and Padres last year. That didn't work out, but I had Giolito winning the Cy Young too. That's who I predicted this year for that. But predicting the Cy Young is just stupid. But you're never gonna get there.
Yeah, no, he's good and he pitched well today, and I think he's gonna be fine. It's just typical Sox and typical Reinsdorf, they go so far and then they just stop.
Yeah.
Right. Like, all right, we spent enough. Now we're going to stop. It's like, no, you need one more pitcher, and you probably,
Yeah.
But we'll see.
We'll see. I think they'll be fine again. Injuries always will play a factor, but that division sucks. That division's horrible. It's the worst division in baseball.
Well, we just made it a little bit better the last 7 games.
True. Yeah, I mean, you guys won the division last year. How many games did you win last year? 92? I think you won 92 or 93, and you won the division by 13 games.
Yeah, because again, you remember they had it pretty well locked up, and then when they were supposed to be on cruise control is when Lynn and Giolito got hurt, and so they gave up some ground in September. But let's hope that that trend is reversed and they got their injuries here out of the way in the beginning. So.
I also didn't know when I was doing the baseball preview shows. Last year was the first year in the history of the organization they won the playoffs back-to-back years.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
That's crazy. Usually teams will put together at least a 2, 3, 4, 5 year run. And
And
Right?
you
Got a
know, and
shot
they
for that.
certainly had opportunities. You know, they if you go back, I mean, certainly early turn of the century, they were always good, but
Yeah.
then you know that was when only one team from each league
Right.
would
Right.
go.
Right.
Same thing in the '50s; they were always behind the Yankees.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and they made it in '59 and lost, but they were always the second best team every year, but
Yeah.
behind Mickey Mantle's Yankees.
Yeah.
So, um, and then in the '90s, we can talk about what happened
We
there
can
as
certainly
well.
talk
So,
about those because that's one of the things I remember most because you got, man, I being in Chicago during that time, I remember specifically being in the office and you just giving me so much flack. Like, this was our year. I heard it from all Sox fans.
right,
And until you guys
right.
won in 2005, it's like, all I heard is like, that was our year. We would have won it in 94. Like, no, you wouldn't have. You know, you guys were dropping in the standings. The Indians were one game back, and the Indians won the
Well,
division.
that is what people that's the part that people forget. The
Yeah.
Indians were the team on the rise, and
Yeah.
they were a good
And
team.
the next year, the strike shortened year, they were 144.
Yeah,
So
they were good,
I liked my chances, but yeah,
but they didn't win either. They
no,
didn't win
didn't.
either.
No,
So
that's yeah.
I think the difference between the '94 team and the up and coming Cleveland might have caught them. There's no doubt about that. It was getting close, but
experience.
the Sox, yeah, they had the playoffs the season before. They had good veterans and they had good young pitching. So yeah, definitely. Thomas was in the prime of his career. I mean, there was a lot going for him for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
Yeah, it
Cleveland
was
team was loaded too. In hindsight, you look back and that Cleveland team probably certainly had more talent after the strike.
Yeah, you know, and that run was fun for the Indians, but again, you know, they don't have a World Series title to show for it, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
It was fun, but I went to so many games, and we went to games. We went to a lot of Indians and Indians White Sox games too.
Yeah.
Which was always brutal for me going to.
Well, that was the climbing through the ceiling tiles to get the bat. Remember when they were accusing Albert Bell of cheating?
Jason Grimsley. Yeah, that's right. I totally forgot about that. I forgot it was at Comiskey.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, Jason Grimsley. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you know, he came to your team afterwards, so
yeah,
and had the best single year of any White Sox ever.
He did, and actually, I think it was like half a season because he started off extremely slow.
Yeah, which he normally did. But yeah, 31. I think he had 31 home runs in the second half and 89 RBIs or something in the second half.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
But he was still Albert Bell, and he never got ingratiated with the team, and
he didn't get ingratiated in Cleveland either. People loved him, but he was still a dick. Always was a dick. I still call him Joey, but yeah, he was a fun player to watch. One of the things that I learned today, which I'm surprised I didn't know, I was looking up something because I was really struggling with the Mount Rushmore, and so I was looking at everybody's take on this. And one of the things about the Comiskey's, when Comiskey bought the club, he took them to Minnesota.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so the first year he took them they were the St. Paul Saints. And then they started, when the American League started, they were one of the charter franchise. I don't know what year that was. One of the charter franchises in the American League when he brought them to Chicago. But originally he took them to St. Paul, which I did not know.
I did not know that either. There you go.
And there was something, they were the Whites, but there was something.
And now everybody knows. So
yeah, there you
you've
go.
done your job.
You've
educated your audience.
5 million people watching this episode. Someday, Bob. Someday
Jay.
they're going to watch the replay. This lives in infamy, and we're going to be so engaging that we'll do little outtakes of it and post them, and it'll be like, wow, we got to go see these guys.
Right.
All right. So tell me a little bit about, you know, you mentioned a little bit about growing up and how you became a Sox fan, but what are some of those other early memories of either games or what are some of your early memories of being a Sox fan?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it was going to games with Dad, and he had a good friend, Mr. McIntyre, who only had daughters. So, and he worked for one of the steel companies that sponsored the White Sox back in those days. So we always got to go, and we always got good seats when we went with Mr. Mac. And so one of the things I remember, like a prized possession, which I don't have, was the 1976 White Sox styrofoam antenna ball. Remember when cars had antennas and you put the things on top of the antenna? And it was sponsored by Phillips 76, the gas station. So, the bicentennial year, that was a big, everything 76 was big that year. But I had that thing for a long, long time. But so funny things that I remember as a kid. I think you probably recall that my mother taught Irish dancing. So I actually did the Irish jig in center field of the old Comiskey Park. Yeah. When Irish night. Sorry, I shouldn't have told you that when you were taking a sip.
I've seen you dance.
Well, let's just say I was much younger. But that was what I remember about that was we danced before the game. And then it was a Saturday night game, and there, it was Irish night, so there were all these different bus trips, and they're all people from neighborhoods and all kinds of fun and just chaos going. But Claudell Washington hit 2 home runs in that game. That's what I remember. Yeah.
That's a name that did not come up in my things.
Yeah, see, yeah. It did not come up. Did not come up in my list either. But I do remember that. The 77 White Sox, I was at one of the early games when they first started doing the na, hey, hey, goodbye. And I don't know if they started that. I don't think they did, but they owned it that season, right? Like it became their calling card because they were known as the Southside Hitmen, and they had Oscar Gamble and Richie Zisk and Chet Lemon and all these guys hitting a ton of home runs for that season. And so that song, and it was actually against the Minnesota Twins. Twins were in first place and we were chasing them. And it was the game that they passed them in the standings. So it was an August game, and the whole spontaneous, singing of na, 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 hey, hey, goodbye. Yeah. And that stuck ever since. God, I have a lot of memories of, going to games with my buddies, certainly in our 20s and 30s that I don't remember a whole lot of them, but we had a lot of fun at those games. But just actually up until COVID, going to every opening game, that was my thing. And, started taking my kids to opening day. And
should be a national holiday.
It should be. And unfortunately, I missed it this year because when they did the lockout and they switched the dates, I had a work trip planned. But I think probably, I can remember, and I don't think a lot of people did, with that when you're little and you're watching games on TV. So the White Sox used to be on channel 44, which was a random channel, and that's back when Harry Carey and Jimmy Piersall did the games, right? And they were hysterical.
They were
people
awesome.
May remember Jimmy Piersall as the player who climbed the wall in center field. He had his own issues, and Harry was still Harry was Harry before he got to Wrigley and became a caricature of himself. But so awesome. And then you'd listen on the radio, right? That was a big deal. Always listen on the radio, and that. That 77 team, I was primed, right? I was 11 years old. It was such a fun summer, and they just, we hadn't had a good team in Chicago for so long, really in anything, that they just, they owned the town. And they Oscar Gamble with the
big
afro out to, Richie Zisk. And the funny thing of both of those guys, I think were there 1 year. Gamble might have been there 2 years. That was it. He was took the storm and they got rid of him. And they never really did much other than that one season. And then of course they didn't finish it. They didn't. They ended up finishing in second place. But it was a fun summer.
I don't know why Jerry Dubzinski just came into my head. You remember Jerry Dubzinski?
Yeah, he scored the clinching run for the White Sox in '83.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I believe it was Vance Law got the hit, and Dubinsky scored the clinching run to get him into the
I
playoffs.
forgot about Julio Cruz on that team too. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and both, I think both Laws, right? Vance Law and Rudy
Yeah,
Law were both
yeah,
on
both
that
of them
team.
were. So was that what year did Fisk and Lazinski come over?
So Fisk came in '81.
Oh, they're
He
different years. Okay.
was yeah, and Luzinski, I can't remember if he came. God, tested me. Can't remember if he came before
I think he
'83.
had to come
He might.
before the year before because I went to the whatever the Sox Fest or something. My neighbor or
Okay.
something took us to Sox Fest in the off season, and it was the year that Fisk got there, and I met Carlton Fisk and Greg Luzinski. So yeah, so it must have been.
Yeah. So, well, Fisk came. He was so Reinsdorf and Einhorn bought the team in '81. They bought it the same year the Tribune bought the Cubs,
Cubs.
um, and they wanted to make a big splash as new owners, and that was their big signing. They signed Carlton Fisk, and I think Luzinski came the next year. I think I don't think he came the same
I could be wrong.
year as Fisk.
Yeah.
And then
might have been Lazinski's first
yeah,
year.
and then so those guys, and then Ron Kittle
Yep.
was the rookie of the year on that team. That was Lamar Hoyt's one great season. He went 24-10 or something like that. Yeah, I mean, again, a great team, but then they couldn't do anything after with it. That was always there. And LaRusso was the manager then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not one of my favorite people.
No, but he's a good manager. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So
No, I'll give him that. There's very few people in this world that I dislike. He's one of them. So I wasn't planning on going here, but how do you feel as him being the manager right now?
it's still
How did you
mixed
feel when they
feelings
signed him
about it.
last year?
When they signed him last year, was not happy about it.
Yeah.
Especially, when the news came out that they knew about the DUI.
Right.
Yeah, but it's mixed feelings because certainly, again, he's a Hall of Fame manager.
Right,
He's
right.
done it. He's won, a ton of games. If not the most, he's right up there.
Yeah.
So, but definitely, he's 78 years old when they signed him. So you're kind of
And
like,
he'd been out of the game
doesn't
managing for a while.
yeah, and so it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And it certainly was, it seemed like it was the owner undercutting the general manager. And that was just a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, well, if he does what he always does and he wins, then it's going to be okay.
Right.
And it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, they went to the playoffs. They're also they got tons of talent, so they should be in the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, mixed emotions. He definitely, I think he settled in. He had some mistakes in the beginning of last season with like not understanding the extra innings rule and some other stuff, but he definitely settled in. What I would like to see, and they're not doing it, is they should have someone on his bench that they're grooming to take over.
Yeah.
And soaking up all his knowledge. And they've got some guys. I don't know if they're great candidates or not, but they've got some guys in their minor league who've been around for a long time and are part of their system. And whether it's one of them or somebody else, that's what they should be focused on. Because what are you going to get? A couple more years max from them?
Yeah. Yeah. And, if they win this year, who knows? Who knows? One of those people that is not up and coming in their managerial ranks anymore is Omar Vizquel.
Yeah.
He was my favorite player of all time. And for people who don't know, he ran into some issues with exposing himself to a young bat boy who has some disabilities. He's my favorite player of all time. It just makes me sick now. It's like, favorite number and everything. It's like 13 is one of my favorite numbers. It's like,
right.
When anybody ever asks me my favorite baseball player, it's hands down Omar Vizquel. Now it's like, I have to go back to Nolan Ryan. There's a Nolan Ryan documentary coming out. I don't know if you saw it. I saw the trailer for it the other day. I think it's out this week or something. But
Speaking of numbers that don't warrant the Hall of Fame, Nolan Ryan, this come on, if longevity
more
does not
losses
make
and more
you great.
walks than anybody.
He other than I don't know.
He has 7 no-hitters.
We don't need to go.
He's
got 7 no-hitters.
And
His one loss
one-hitters.
percentage. His one loss percentage is literally like one game. So he pitched for 20 years and he's won 20 more games than he's lost.
Yeah, but his ERA is not bad. He's never an ERA guy. He's 3 in the mid threes. But he also played on really shitty teams, except for like the Houston teams. The Angels team sucked. The Rangers team sucked.
I just think he's overrated.
Things with strikeouts and everything, but being a workhorse and pitching late into games.
Without a doubt. Not saying he's not good. Not saying he didn't have magic when he had it, but he also
if somebody pitches 7 no-hitters and 11 one-hitters.
Philip Humber pitched a no-hitter. I mean, pull out the list of guys who've hit. Pull out the list of guys who've hit no-hitters. Yeah, but Sandy Koufax won a ton more games.
He also played in the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's a different story. This is not a Pete Rose argument here. There are definitely some compiling numbers there, but look what he was doing when he was 45 years old. And you're just pissed off that he kicked Robin Ventura's ass.
I am, but that's beside the point. I felt it. I mean, I always felt that way when I was younger. I felt like everybody wanted to give him all these props because he threw hard and he had all the no-hitters. And without a doubt, he's phenomenal. But again, when you look at it, it's like he would be 16 and 15. I mean, that's not that's not dominating.
He was never.
That means that the days that you were off, you were off.
Yeah, again, his ERA was never that bad, though. I mean, he didn't.
No.
So he was
because
never.
He pitched 7 no-hitters.
He was never the best pitcher in the league. Maybe
right.
for a couple years in California he might have been, but it's a different story. That's a different argument for another day.
Another day. All right.
Two other things I want to talk about real quick, or I just came up, is like, where did Reinsdorf's money come from? I don't know his background, where his money came from. Do you know?
I don't, to be honest with you. I mean, it's been so long ago. But he's the majority holder of the majority ownership group. It's not even him individually.
Right. Yeah.
So he's just the face of the group that owns the majority of the stock. I think his particular ownership, and this could all change. I don't pay attention to that, but was 20%.
Right.
Right. But he was the head of the group that owned the majority of the team. I just remember the other guy that he bought it with, Eddie Einhorn.
Yeah.
He was a TV guy, and that was he was the one who took him on cable, and that was something that hurt them for a long time. But I don't know where Reinsdorf got his money from.
Do you remember On TV?
Yeah. That's a different cable. That's a different.
No, it's just like it was a Chicago thing. It's like I remember. Yeah, we were before cable, but I remember On TV had that little box. Before cable, I guess it was probably the earliest form of cable, but
yes,
yeah. The other stuff I'll wait because I want to talk about some of your favorites, managers, uniforms. I want to talk about new stadium versus old stadium, things like that. But we'll wait. We have a section called White Sox faves, and we'll wait there. But right now, I want to get into the all-time White Sox lineup. So I have to say, this was a fun one. One of the things I like being a baseball fan, and most people that have done the show with me so far, is just reliving those memories when we were kids, or rifling through baseball cards, or going to games, and players that you totally had forgotten about or haven't thought of in 30 years. Like, oh yeah, remember Jerry Dibzinski? Things like that. It's just fun reminiscing about those. And again, I obviously did not grow up a White Sox.
Jerry's not making the list. Sorry.
No, I don't think so. But I went to a lot. I mean, compared to, I probably went to more White Sox games than 95% of White Sox fans, just because I lived in Chicago and I had you and other friends, and I just love baseball. And anytime the Indians were there, I'd go to 10, 15 games a year.
It's a lot.
And I love baseball. So Now, I had really never had an issue with the White Sox before we joined divisions, or at least the Central, because you guys were in the West, weren't you?
Yeah.
Right before that, that's right.
Yeah.
So, and what was that, 93? Right before, or was it 94 was the first year? I don't remember.
Yeah, I didn't do my homework on that, so
yeah, I think it's 92 or 93, something like that. But I always rooted for the White Sox, and then it all changed. then it changed when the Indians and White Sox were going at it, and just yeah. So I had a really bad taste in my mouth for White Sox, and not fans. I mean, obviously I have friends that I love and adore. It's weird because I have a lot of friends, like close friends that are White Sox fans, and I have a lot of close friends that are University of Michigan fans. It's weird. Two teams I dislike the most. But I have to say, but being removed from Chicago for so long now, 10 years or whatever, although I spent last winter there, some of that bitterness is gone. A lot of the memories of bad things. So, and I love baseball. I think this team they have right now is young, and it's an exciting team to watch. They have a ton of talent. So, and it's not just because I picked them to win, but it's, it'll be interesting to see. But this lineup, I thought, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that because I think some of the shocking thing, part of my shock is going to come here, and the next part of the shock will come at the end of the show. So,
okay.
So let's. So what I'm going to do? I have my.
So I'm going first. Is that? Okay.
No, I think we'll go position by position, and I'll type yours in, and it'll just move them over. I have mine in. I want to know. We'll just go down in order. Yeah, this was interesting. It was, yeah. I'm just gonna shut up. Let's. Who did you have for first base?
So one of the things that I did is I looked at who are my favorite White Sox players of all time, and then I had to look like who are the legitimate players per position. So I'm going to give you both, but the second one is the all time. Okay. All right, and so the first one is actually the same guy both lists, Paulie Konerko, first base.
Okay.
And
so that's who you have, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And why did he end up in the middle? Oh, there you
go. I got. He just comes in randomly. I got to move it.
Yeah, heart and soul of their World Series team and the captain and all of his time there. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I have Konerko as well, and I have friends who are huge Paulie fans. This is when I really did not like the White Sox either, but I had nothing against him. But I went back and looked. I had a really hard time today going through all this stuff, and I went back and looked at his numbers, and they're much better than I even thought they were.
Yeah.
So you look at the stretch he had, 10-year stretch he had with he put up some serious numbers. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was how many times did he hit? He have over 100 RBIs, like 6 times. And then 91.
Yeah, they might. Well, certainly more than that, but I think in that 10-year stretch, yeah. I mean, he was just he was clutch for them for so many seasons, and he was the heart of that team.
So it helps that I'm trying to pull up his thing, so if I spell it right. And he's just one of those beloved players. He's and White Sox have a lot of those. I'm trying to look.
And it's funny because when you look through their history. They've had some good first basemen, but nobody that stayed with the club for a long period of time.
7 years of 100 RBIs plus an 81, a 97, a 99, a 90, and an 88. So that's and played good first base.
Yeah.
And again, with like you said, longevity and a fan favorite. I had Konerko as well, and I think we have Konerko because. I'm assuming then we'll just flip this because I'm assuming you have this then as the DH.
Absolutely.
That gives us
there's no question about that. So.
Flexibility there.
Yeah. And, and he did play
Thomas in the lineup.
Right. He played some first base and he played first base long enough that you could consider him, but no, that's where he belongs.
I saw he played almost 1,000 games at first base or something like that. So 997 or so. But primarily a DH, thank goodness, because he was not a good fielder. But he didn't need to be.
No,
that dude was huge.
Yeah, he didn't need to be, and he wasn't. He was. There's been a lot worse first basemen around though too.
Yeah,
so I mean, he got a lot of grief for being, no defense. But
I remember being
anyways,
in an elevator with him in the Hancock building. When I worked in the Hancock building, his office was in the Hancock building. That dude is massive.
yeah,
He's massive.
yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, we'll get to talk about him a little bit more. I think so.
For sure. All right. So second base was an interesting one. I know it's kind of an obvious choice if you're not a fan of the White Sox, but who did you go at second base?
Well, so again, I started with who was my favorite second baseman for the White Sox of all time, and that was George Orta, who played second base for the White Sox when I was a kid.
Yeah, I remember George Orta well.
But I think it's a no-brainer that Nellie Fox is on this list.
I don't think this is
He
no-brainer.
doesn't agree with.
I don't think it's as no-brainer as it appears. I think because of longevity and how many years he played is what gives him the nod. Because you certainly could have put Eddie Collins here as well.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Eddie Collins, but again, it's so long ago. It's so hard to be like, how good was that guy? I mean, Fox.
I gave him Nelly the nod just because of longevity. But if you look at their numbers, they were identical players. They're like the same player. But so I also had Fox, but it wasn't.
And I think because he played, whatever he played, 13, 14 seasons with them, something like that. 13.
So. One of the second basemen I forgot. I don't know how I forgot. Was Ray Durham. I totally forgot about Ray Durham.
Ray Durham was somebody that I considered because again, I loved him as a player, but but he's
not a Hall of Famer
like Famer, right.
Eddie Collins and Nellie Fox.
Right.
Nellie they used to call old aches and pains.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess he would complain about like all the time. He's like oh, my back hurts, my shoulder hurts, but he'd go in there every day and play.
Right.
And then Eddie Collins, I saw this. He's called Cocky Collins. I guess he was really cocky. So, but yeah, I didn't think this was as straightforward as I thought when I first did it. Because I originally just said Nellie Fox, but I totally forgot about Ray Durham.
Yeah, and I think Eddie Collins is so long ago that nobody even really doesn't register for us.
All right, let's go third base. Is it pretty obvious?
Third base is another one where it's both. Yep, Robin Ventura. Again, a category where when you look at the Sox, it's like again, some guys who had a cup of coffee with the team that were, really good players, but nobody that stuck around that long. And then you start looking at the numbers and you're like, Ventura had a really good career.
Yeah. And it seems like in the midst of it, and me, again, loving college baseball and watching him in college at Oklahoma State and the hit record and all that stuff, I was a big fan. And it just seems like he never lived up to what he could have been, at least in the midst of it all. But you go back and look at his numbers. Like, look at his numbers now, it's like he had a great career.
He had a great career. And I think that's the thing. He hit 59 straight games, right, in college. And so everybody thought he was going to be the next Joe DiMaggio. And that's a tough mantle to wear. Sure. And then, again, you go back and you look at, like, he was a damn good player.
Yeah, he was.
Right? And again, a good, solid teammate. And, the biggest thing that I remember about him is when he called out the ownership in what they call the famous white flag trade in 97, because they dumped a lot of players and they weren't that far out of it. And he had just come off the injury list. Yep. And he's like, I've worked my butt to get back. And
that was right after the ankle injury, right?
Yeah. And it was like, you just added an all-star without making a trade. Right. And then they were only 3.5 games back when they made that trade.
I remember you and everybody being pissed. I remember that.
Yeah.
One. Yeah. I remember the ankle injury. That was not a pretty one.
No,
that was not a pretty one. I remember that one. And I remember Jason Kendall hitting first base for the Pirates.
Oh yeah. That
was a bad one too.
Yeah.
I was just a similar thing I saw. I never saw Josh Nader's from the Indians injury last year or the year before. That's also gruesome. It's not obvious when you first see it, but then it's like the leg's just dangling.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
I hadn't seen it until this week, but all right. So that one's easy. All right. So let's move to shortstop. What do you have for shortstop?
So again, when I was looking at my favorite players, I thought that would be easy, maybe Ozzie, but I think that Tim Anderson is going to become like one of my favorite players. He already is, right?
Yeah.
And I think has a chance to be really great. And then in a nod to my dad, I was looking at Louis Aparicio,
Yeah.
and who had a great career, but again, you probably I think you go with the Hall of Famer Luke Appling here. So
I went with Appling as well. I went Aparicio was who I kind of first went with, but yeah, I mean that double play combination with Appling or with
Aparicio and Fox.
That was other than Trammell and Whitaker, maybe the best. I would have loved to seen Omar and Alomar play for longer together, but
right.
That was a pretty formidable thing. But yeah, Appling. One thing we didn't mention at third base too. A couple people that had Josh Creedy had a really good career for the White Sox.
Well, and and he was clutch in that. In that stretch for them when they won.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
But again, cut short by injuries. So he. Bill Melton.
Yeah, I had Bill Melton on my short list too. Yeah.
So
Melton was a long time. Wasn't he an announcer for a long time too?
Yeah, post game show.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember him more from that than anything else. But yeah, I did have. I guess another person I'm going backwards. I'm looking at my short list. Was at first base you have Jose Abreu too.
Well, I mean,
you got Paulie and Frank, so I mean,
right. I think if Abreu continues in what he's been doing, and if they can win with Abreu, then he gets maybe a nod because he's a better player than Paulie. But until that happens,
and I think in the White Sox fans' eyes, it'd be hard to take down Paulie. I think he has to be one of the most beloved White Sox of all time. All right, so I think Ozzie is fifth on this list in shortstops, if that.
Yeah, I mean, I think again it's just because of when he played for me, and in that stretch run of just teams that I really liked, and he's just a good feisty character.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's one of those guys that you want on your team. Like you love him if he's on your team, but
right.
And I looked at it from the standpoint is I was not a huge Ozzie fan, especially because I thought he was overrated as can be. I thought defensively he wasn't that good. He won one Gold Glove and he made 25 errors that year because the Gold Glove is not an error. Other things go into that, which I think is stupid.
Right.
I think they need to change that. But
but I mean, he won Rookie of the Year, and I mean, he had a good run. He was a couple of all-star teams, I think.
Yeah. I think one of the things that stood out to me when I was doing the show or putting the lineup together is, especially compared to the other teams I've done so far, the White Sox had just a lot of solid, everyday major league players. I'm sure there's other teams like the Tigers have a lot of Hall of Famers, and like it seems like at every position, where the White Sox are just deep. I mean, they at every position there was a conversation at least to be had, and there was like Joe Creedy, for example, and we didn't put Eddie Collins in the lineup. I think it's just there's a lot of players in the White Sox that are a lot of solid players.
Yeah, and the other thing too is when you look at them, they have a lot of solid players and a lot of good players that did not have longevity with the team.
Right.
Where you think of again, the Tigers are a great example. Not only were they really good players, but they were there for a long time. I mean, they defined those teams, right? So.
Yeah, I'm interested to look at that aspect as I do the rest of the league, because I think I'm gonna run into that again. I mean, especially in this day and age. But I don't think I'm going to run into that with the Cardinals. But I think even with the Indians, I think it was the same thing. There's players that were there for a short period of time. But definitely the White Sox. The White Sox seems like it's always like that. Cubs too. I think there's a lot of teams that are like that. But I think I'm interested to see what I get done and compare like the overall lineups and the depth. Because so far the White Sox to me is by far the deepest organization I've done so far. Again, maybe there's more Hall of Famers here and there, but
Yeah, I don't know if it's deeper as much as if you were like to do the Yankees or something like that. I mean,
I
there's
throw
just
them
some
out.
no brainers, right?
I
You know what
throw
I mean?
them
It's
out.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, but I think that's the difference is probably most teams have just no brainers where it's not
yeah,
much of a conversation.
yeah,
Where
yeah,
with the White Sox, certainly they have their no brainers, but most positions you're like, oh, I'd have to think about that,
yeah,
or as a player I didn't see because they were good in the 50s and they were
right,
good in the
right,
teens and the 20s,
right,
and
right.
what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
So
You're just going off what other people record and
right,
stats and stuff like
right.
that. So, all right, let's move to left field. See what you did here.
All right, so left field was another one where, like, when I had to think about like my favorite players, and I'm like, man, we haven't had very good many left fielders, right? So, like, my two favorite probably left fielders for the White Sox were Carlos May and Tim Raines. Tim Raines, Hall of Famer, but not for what he did with us.
Yeah, yeah,
But Minnie Minoso, I think, gets the nod here for just being a great player, and then the uniqueness of what how long he played and what they did to bring him out to get him in the fifth decade and silly stuff like that. But when you go back and look at his numbers, you're like,
oh no,
he was a really good player.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just it's surprising that did he get in the veterans? Did he get in the Hall of Fame?
I think so. I think he got in. I'll have to look it up. I'll have to look it. So I looked at his thing.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I looked at his thing. I don't know if it says designated. Yeah, Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
he did get.
But I think through the veteran committee, but
yeah, which they need to change how that's done, voted for anyhow. But
right.
yeah, this was a tough one for me. I went back and forth for this a long time. And I think this is one of the shocking ones. I did not put Minnie Minoso, and I again, he was a beloved White Sox, kind of like Paulie before Paulie. The White Sox fans loved him, his personality, and he was a really good player for a long time. And I think he came back.
Right.
Philadelphia before that. Was he with Philadelphia before that?
Yeah, and then they brought him back, and then he came back twice, and then they brought him back
to Cleveland. I remember we went to the Indians, and then
and then they brought him back like in the early '80s to give him another plate appearance. So he could play in 5 decades.
Yeah.
So
because you go from 1964 was his last real year with the White Sox, and then 1976, and then 1980. 3 at bats and 2 at bats. It's awesome. I love stuff like that. This is one of those things. This is where things get really crazy for me. I could not. I really went back and forth with Minnie Minoso and Shoeless Joe Jackson. I tried to rule out Shoeless Joe because of the scandal. I refused to do it because I don't think he shouldn't have been banned, but he was a part of it, so I just couldn't do it. He was on my list for the Indians. He had a better Indians career than he did White Sox career. Everybody remembers.
Well, so that's why I didn't give him the nod. I mean, like, everybody talks about him because he's the poster child of supposedly he's the one who didn't cheat, but there's also a quote credited to him that he did. So. I don't know, but again, when I looked at it, and even just looking at, in general, in terms of greatest White Sox players, you think, Jackson makes a list, and it's like, he wasn't there long enough.
Well, how many years did he end up playing? 7
Only
years
4 or 5.
No, I think it was like 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 years. And he hit. Let's see, 378, 393, 375.
Right.
It's like. Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of things about Joe Jackson. I've read too that he was involved in it too, but from everything you hear, how dumb he was, it's he's kind of maybe following, but he's just one of my favorite players that I've read about, and I've read about him for years, and so I'm sure that played a factor in my, but it was tough. It was tough, but we'll talk about this later because this comes back around a little bit. So. Okay, I see what you did for center field because I think I went a little on the limb on this one too.
So this was one that again I didn't feel like there was any clear candidate. My favorite center fielder for the White Sox was Chet Lemon. And actually, when I was doing some research, he popped up on most of the lists, in the top 5 for center fielders. But so the guy that I went with, again, you talk about nobody knows how good he was or not, but I went with Fielder Jones because he was a center fielder on the Hitless Wonders and the manager who beat the Cubs in the World Series in 1906.
Wow. Fielder Jones. I did not see that coming at all.
And the only reason he gets a nod is because he was also the manager when they beat the Cubs in the World Series. So.
Yeah, we had this debate when we did the Indians episode too with Lou Boudreau. And there's another Indians player, Nap Lajoie too. Got the nod from people because of that. But yeah, Fielder Jones. Wow. That's okay. I don't feel so bad now. No, the person I picked, I think, is one of the most underrated players of his generation. And I put Chet Lemon.
Oh, nice.
Everybody remembers him. Everyone remembers him being a solid player. He was a really good major league player for a very long time with the White Sox and with the Tigers. So I went with him. They had some other, again, it's not real deep in center field. Aaron Rowan, only played 4 or 5 years, but he was a good center fielder, but he wasn't Chet Lemon.
Yeah. No, Chet Lemon was my favorite, and it broke my heart when they traded him. So
yeah. All right, let's go to right field.
Right field. Ready?
Yep.
There he is. Number 3 himself. Harold Baines.
All right.
People have to play more than 1,000 games in right field for the White Sox.
I understand. I knew he was eligible for sure.
And what people forget is that he was a hell of a right fielder when he came up before he blew his knee out. I mean, arm,
I remember.
Speed, defense, and he could hit. Hall of Famer. That's all I gotta say.
All right, so this is one of those
Let's
things.
See who you have, and then you can pick on Harold. Let's see who you have first.
I have the obvious choice. I have Ordonez. Ordonez's stretch with the White Sox was remarkable. I mean,
yeah, great.
And Baines' longevity stuff. Yeah, it's not gonna compare with Ordonez, but if you compare Baines' top 5 years and Ordonez's top 5 years, there's no comparison. It's Ordonez. Baines is one of those players who I don't dislike him. I don't think he should have gotten the Hall of Fame. I think there's a lot of players that are like that, but yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that in terms of being in the Hall of Fame or not. Maglio was one of those players, and here's the difference, Jay. Like, Maglio, as good of a run as he had, at least for me, did not stand out in my memory. Like, when I was trying to think who are the best right fielders, certainly Baines I thought of, because again, Baines had that run when he first came up that he was a phenomenal right fielder.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking who else do we have? And you look at some of the names that come up, like Alex Rios and other people. It's really? That's it?
Right.
And then Maglio, I'm like, oh my God. And I don't know why. It's probably because he kind of it's probably because of the way he left.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I loved him when he was there, and kind of totally forgot about that. But
he was clutch. I mean, it seems like every time I looked up, he was getting big hits. Him and Jose Valentin, every damn time, it was always what?
Yeah. So I mean, when I looked at it, and then I was like, oh my God, I could see that. But again, I think I just went with, where my heart is. I don't think that either one of them is
a bad answer.
You're not going to. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Neither one is
Ordonez for
bad.
me is also. I mean, he's a player that I didn't love because of the timing and everything, but he's also one of those players I think is underrated. Um, you look at his numbers during that stretch with the White Sox and early on with the Tigers. He was a very very productive player, and I think he just gets over. I mean, nobody even remembers him really, and he was a star in this league. But you know,
I
which
think he
says
just played
something.
at
It
a
says
time
something that he
when
doesn't stand
there were
out
other
over Harold
guys.
Baines because Harold Baines' personality is like, you know. So
Yeah,
what is that saying about Ordonez? I guess, but
and they both had great chants.
yeah, yeah. No,
Harold,
I hate it. That's the thing I
Harold.
hated most. Oh,
What about Julio?
Bagley.
Rio? I
I
mean,
don't know
it's
if
the
there's a
Wizard of
cheer in baseball that
Oz.
I
Come
hated
on, it's the
most.
Wizard of Oz. It's the Wizard of Oz.
And I love the Wizard of Oz, but I'm a musical guy. But that chant is my least favorite chant in the history of baseball.
But I mean, when you think about it, it's like both of them had these, and you're right. He just gets forgotten about.
Yeah,
I
he
don't know
does.
why. I think maybe because there was just so many other big names playing at that time, where even though he put up great numbers, they were never league leading numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
So
I do like the Go Go White Sox song. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah, I was
What's not to like?
gonna play that, but I didn't. All right. Let's move on to catcher.
I think for me, again, this is a no-brainer. Carlton Fisk.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of players that I don't like at all, I think this is closer than most people think. AJ had a really good career with the White Sox, and he was a fan favorite.
Yeah, but Fisk hit more home runs as a White Sox than he did as a Red Sox.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he was with us longer.
No, I
Brzezinski
know.
wasn't with us all that long. I mean, he was, but he wasn't.
Yeah. No, I think there's no question it's Fisk. I just think I think it's closer than I thought it would be. And again, I don't want to put AJ anywhere. Don't like him at all. But yeah, Carlton Fisk. And I always liked Carlton Fisk. I mean, again, I just watched the Game 6 of the 75 World Series with his home run the other day. How classic. I don't like the Red Sox.
Yeah, he was still is one of my favorite White Sox of all time.
Yeah. Do you ever get a chance to meet him?
Once. So, but not like in any in depth.
Is he still alive?
Get to meet him once. Yeah.
Where is he at? I haven't seen him in years. Is he?
I think he's still in the Chicago area.
Is he?
I mean, he might be retired and living somewhere else, but he lived in the Chicago area for a long time.
Yeah, I haven't. You think somebody with that big a name and pedigree would be doing something in baseball?
No, he kept a low profile afterwards.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All right.
Bo Jackson still lives in the area too.
Oh, I didn't know he lived in the area.
Yeah.
So I remember Bo Jackson. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was Bo Jackson. When he came back from the hip injury, I was a big Bo Jackson fan, and my buddy and I we drove from Traverse City, Michigan, to go see him play, and we were right outside the stadium when he hit the home run. We didn't get there in time when he hit the home run, his first at bat back.
I was at that game.
Were you? Yeah, we were trying to get there. We were right at the stadium. Like the stadium's right here, and like we're listening to it on the radio. We're like, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those cool memories.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
That was a cool.
Um,
that was a cool.
Yeah,
cool thing. All right, this last part. All right, I'm interested to see where you go with this. Starting pitching.
So again, for me, the fan favorite is Burley. That's the guy that everybody loved. Started looking at it like, man, there's so many, like, there's a lot of guys, but at the same time, I was like, I never saw any of the iconic ones.
Right.
Never saw Billy Pierce pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Early Wynn, never saw any of those guys pitch. Wilbur Wood, people forget how good he was for the White Sox.
Ted Lyons.
Ted Lyons is who I went with.
Okay.
So
I don't even remember who I ended up going with. Yeah. So, this was a tough one for me. Again, all those names and the pitcher with the best ERA in the history of baseball, Ed Walsh.
He definitely his name came up again. When you look at it, and I think most lists that you look at it have, it's like Lyons and Walsh,
Walsh,
1
yeah.
and 2. So
All the lists I look at had Lyons, Walsh, and Burley up there. I'm not comfortable with what I did necessarily, but let me go back up here. Again, this was a list that I thought was deep. I mean, you had Walsh, you had Lyons, you had Burley, you had Wilbur, you had a lot of. I mean, Dowell even had a good career.
Yeah,
Sale,
you had Billy Pierce, you had Early Wynn, you had
it's deep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a deep 1 through 10. I thought was the deepest one I've done so far by far, especially because the Reds, man, they have no pitching. The Reds have no pitching history, which I think was the last one I did maybe. And the Indians wasn't deep behind Bob Feller and Bob Lemon.
Right.
But this was deep. This was deep. I ended up going with Burley.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just think because of impact, and again, one of those fan favorites. He was there for a long time. I hated to see him go, even though I'm not a Burley fan. He was just consistent. I mean, he was just consistent.
Yeah.
And
and he only really had one decent year after he left.
Yeah.
I mean, my heart would want to put him there. My heart would want to put him in the Hall of Fame and everything else.
I think he gets in the Hall of Fame. I think he's getting in the Hall of Fame.
But as much as I love Burley, I don't know if again, he was never the best pitcher in the league.
No, but he was like a top 3 pitcher for a long time.
He was top 5, maybe. Definitely consistent. But again, heart and soul of the team, right?
Yeah.
Between him and Konerko.
I think that's why I went with, he was the heart and soul. He's the guy who you thought of, even like, because you had Thomas and those guys on the team too, at the beginning of his career, right?
Right.
Yeah. I don't necessarily give the nod to people that have played, or at least who I saw play, all the time, just because I do a deep dive, and most of these players I know of and heard about and have read about. So I knew Ed Walsh's stats. Look at some of his stats as like complete games. First of all, one year he was 40.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
He was 40 and 20 one year. He had 29 complete games or something. His career ERA.
But and those things are just his ERA I think is what stands out. But he also played at a time when
absolutely
right, that ERAs were lower, but and it's just hard. It's hard to even Ted Lyons. It's like he played in the 30s and 40s, right? Like, how do I know how good he was?
Walsh, right? He had like 5 years that he pitched like over 370 innings. Right. Or something like crazy.
I just know that Ted Lyons' number has been retired for the White Sox forever, right? Like you even knew that as a kid.
Yeah, that's who I originally had, just doing it blindly. I kind of do these just off the top of my head. That's who I had initially, and I could have gone with him. I could have gone with Walsh, but I again, knowing the impact Burley had and the fan favorite, I kind of gave him the nod with that. And I do think he gets in at some point. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's players like that are going to be borderline. It's just going to depend on the writer's perspective of them. But so now we've gotten to this part, the last part, and we've talked about the depth in this within the positions. I don't think there's a deeper position, maybe starting pitching, but relief pitching was also extremely deep. Extremely deep.
But it's extremely deep, but I felt this one more so than starting pitching was deep with people that weren't there very long.
I think that's the nature of the being a relief pitcher first of all.
Right.
But I'm really interested to see all the other teams, how the depth of pitching from a starting perspective and a relief perspective. Of the ones I've done so far, hands down, it's not even relatively close. It's deep on both of these. Who did you go with as for relief?
So again, when I was thinking about like where, who I saw and who had the biggest impact, certainly thought of Bobby Jenks because of what he did for the World Series team.
Yep.
But my personal favorite would have been Thigpen. He set the record. He was consistent for a long time for them. But as I was looking at some of the other names that were coming up, it was like, really, like Roberto Hernandez, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah, had a good run,
Yep.
but like not anybody that I would consider a greatest of all time for anything. Um, so I had a tough time with this one. I ended up going with Hoyt Wilhelm, but only because I think his stats jump out at you,
Yep.
and his career. But he was only with the White Sox I think 4 or 5 seasons. But without a doubt, when you start looking at the body of work,
Yeah.
he's a better pitcher than Jenks and Thigpen and everything else. But so
Yeah. I mean, where is he at here? Let me see. I'm pulling up his career now. Yeah, he was there for a little bit longer. He was there for 6 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 years. Um, yeah, I went with Wilhelm as well. Again, but all those guys again were relatively short lived. I mean, Bobby Thigpen had the 56.
57 in one season.
57, and he had other solid years. It wasn't 57.
Yeah.
But, he stuck out to me. The Bobby Jenks because of the World Series, and I remember Roberto Hernandez, not somebody I liked either.
Right.
But yeah, but this was I thought this was deep, but I went with Hoyt Wilhelm as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And don't forget we had Goose Gossage in the bullpen at one point in time.
Yes,
So
you did. Well, that's our all-time starting lineup. Again, I think the glaring omission is we have several Hall of Famers not on this list. Eddie Collins, Harold Baines, I don't have. So I mean, again, you can't go wrong. I don't think there's anything here that's just like, well, again, because center fielder isn't that deep, Fielder Jones. I love that. That might be my favorite pick of any show I've done so far. I didn't
even know who he was. I never even heard his name before.
Oh, I've heard his name.
And and maybe I have, but it was like one of those like Fielder Jones, like who the heck is that? And it's like, oh my god, he was the player manager when they in 1906 when they beat the Cubs. But the other thing is, like in his bio, they talked about how he didn't like to make the walk from center field in to the pitcher's mound, so he didn't change pitchers very often.
Oh, that's hilarious. Fielder Jones, yeah, that's going to go down as one of my favorite picks of all time.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. That's a good lineup. I mean, that's solid. I'm looking from the perspective when I get done with all these and comparing people's lineups. And I like this one. I like it compared to the Tigers. I love the Indians. And I like that one, but I don't think it's as strong as this one is. I don't know. I have to look. I have to put them side by side and then look. But yeah, this is a good one. All right, let's move on to some White Sox faves. And we've talked about some of this stuff already, but so who is your favorite all-time player? Is it Harold Baines? Because you had the bobblehead.
My favorite all-time player?
Yeah.
No.
Or maybe a couple.
Yeah, I mean, so as a kid, like I said, Chet Lemon was my favorite. Carlton Fisk was my favorite for a long, long time. Frank Thomas, I know a lot of people didn't love him, but I mean, he was so good, so good. But my favorite player of all time is Paulie Konerko. Yeah, and again, just I love the way he played. I like the way he carried himself.
Yeah.
I like the way he committed to the program. The famous line of, what's the difference between 14 and 17 million? He's like, I'm already set for life. He's like,
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always liked players like that, like Paulie, who are just good guys off the field. I've always just kind of been drawn to those type of players. I mean, there's a lot of players that are I'm sure I've read a lot of stuff about him. That a lot of it's not accurate, but I can't imagine I would have been a big Ty Cobb fan. A lot of people that are just assholes. I can name Roger Clemens. Players like that.
Hey, Fisk was an asshole by all accounts, right?
Johnny Bench was an asshole.
Kind of. Yeah, but Fisk was like one of those, like the asshole you wanted on your team, right?
Sure,
he was the leader, and he backed up everything that he said or did.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Carlton Fisk and Frank Thomas next to each other?
Not in a long time.
Frank has to be bigger, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Carlton
Oh
Fisk
yeah.
always seemed so massive to me when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
He was
But
so,
he's not
so
as tall. Frank Thomas is 6'4", you know.
How tall was Fisk? He always seemed like he was 10 feet tall to me.
No, I don't. I think he's only like 6 or 6'1". He's not super tall, right? I mean, he's a catcher, so
Yeah, yeah,
um, yeah. But he had a chest out
yeah.
to here,
Barrel
you know.
chest. So tell me, Paulie, I don't know. My favorite White Sox is gonna be Albert Bell. Gonna be Albert Bell and Omar when he was there. But
Right.
there's players
Well, that
that I
doesn't count.
enjoyed watching play, like again Robin, and I liked watching Chet Lemon as well, like you. For me, it's more about other teams. It's more about respecting the game and what they can do and their roles and so forth. Because of the timing of it with the Indians and being in Chicago and I have to endure the crap that I got. There's probably more White Sox players that I dislike than any other team. But again, now being a little bit more removed from it, and really looking at some of these players from a different perspective, I can respect. Like Ordonez, I couldn't. God, that Maglio chant. Oh.
Yeah. See, and again, I loved Maglio as a player and kind of forgot about him. The whole '05 team, obviously because they won, but they were a likable group of guys, right? I mean, and from a standpoint of like just solid professional, there weren't any real big egos on that team.
Yeah.
I mean, Jermaine Dye, had a couple of really good years with the White Sox and very understated. I mean, Przynski was the firebrand, but but you liked him when he was on your team. Joe Creedy, right? I mean, like you said, Aaron Rowan, just was running through walls for that team.
He played shortstop on that team. It wasn't Alexi Ramirez, was it?
No, Uribe.
Oh, Uribe. Yeah, I have. Jose Uribe, another player. I was my buddy Kevin and I.
Uribe and Iguchi were the double play combo.
Man, I was at a Dodgers game. So the Dodgers were always my third team, and I was out at Dodger Stadium with my buddy Kevin in a playoff game when Uribe hit a walk off. That was fun. That was a good memory. He couldn't get the bunt down right before. Like he couldn't get the bunt down to get the advance and run over. Then he hits one out to win the game. But Uribe's a weird guy. He didn't have the body to play shortstop. Didn't look like he was a shortstop or a baseball player for that matter. But yeah, I forgot about him. Totally forgot.
All right, we gotta wrap this thing up here.
Right,
We've been on for a long time, Jay. We're losing people. I think
we talk. All right, real quick. Favorite uniforms.
Actually, the current ones, the black pinstripes are my favorite.
Yeah, I like the red ones. Same ones with the red. I like
the red ones. I got the 50s hat
I like
on.
that
Those
hat.
were good too. So,
I like that.
Yeah.
Favorite manager?
But
LaRusso?
I don't know. I don't have anybody that stands out. I mean, I think again Ozzie because they won, and he was such a character in that short period of time. So I would say I'd have to. I mean, LaRussa again. It was so long ago, and now that he's back, if they win, he'll be one of my favorites. But they never really had great managers that lasted all that long.
Last one in this real quick. Old Comiskey, new Comiskey.
Come
on.
I'm going to go with. I'm going to tell you that the new Comiskey is, and I'll tell you why. Okay. I mean, from an experience.
I don't want to hear that every seat has great sight lines. Don't give me that.
No.
All right.
No, it's the wide concourses and the good food and the service. But I mean, the old stadium was awesome.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, awesome. And it had the double-decker outfield. It had the shower in center field. Yeah. It was raucous. It was wild. But it was a pit towards the end. People forget about that.
No, it was a pit, but it was great. Just like old Tiger Stadium. Similar thing. No. All right. Well, let's move on. Now, the first part of the show, catching up and then the lineup, always is long. This next part goes fairly quickly, even though this was extremely hard for me. I had no idea. I changed a million times. So let's the first one you obviously have. To me, there was only one lock, maybe two. But let's see who you had. Give me the first one. Obviously, Frank Thomas. That's the one.
No, what I'm gonna give you first.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna give you the 4 that didn't make it.
All right.
All right.
All right. Yeah. All right.
All right. So the 4 that don't make it are Minoso,
Mm-hmm.
Collins, Fisk, and Lyons. So that might tell you where I'm ending
So
up.
give me those again.
Minoso,
Yep.
Collins,
Yep.
Fisk, Lyons.
Lions. I didn't even have Fisk on my short list,
So
and I had 8 others.
wow. All right, but Frank Thomas, no doubt about it.
Yep. That was the most
No doubt
obvious
about
lock.
And I think we I don't want to say that we shortchanged Frank because we haven't because we haven't spent a lot of time talking about him because it is so obvious. But
Yeah.
for anybody watching or anybody not remembering, I mean, his first 7-8 years in the league were just, phenomenal. As in line with Gehrig and DiMaggio and other people. I mean, just I think there was some stat of like 100 RBIs, 100 walks, and like 30 homers or something, or 25, whatever it is. And it was like him, Gehrig, Mantle, and somebody else are the only ones that ever do it for that many seasons in a row.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of players that people know that are great. Like he's the name when you think of White Sox. I think that's the name most people think of. There's other players that get from other teams that they're taken for granted because they were so great. Like they don't even enter in some conversations because it's just a given. It's like talking about the Yankees. You can't even talk about the Yankees when you talk about baseball. It's like they have so much history there. All right, so now I'm assuming you went Appling.
I did. I went Appling and Fox.
All right, Appling for Bobby. I also went Appling, and you went Fox. I battled this so much. Before I do mine, give me your last one. I think I know who it is, but give me your last one.
Well, I think you know who it is too. It's Paulie.
It's Paulie. Yeah, and I think looking at people's lists, I did see people put him on the list, on their list. He wasn't a unanimous thing. He wasn't on all the lists I saw by far.
No.
I really battled these two. I had those two, no problem. But I'll tell you who I had. I'll put the people I included in here. I had Burley in there. I had Benosa. I had Collins. I had Paulie. I had Shoeless Joe. I had Walsh, and I had Ted Lyons. I didn't even have Fisk in there, and I should have. But I can make a case for any one of those guys. We've already talked about him, but I went Walsh. Again, if I'm going to pick Burley as my starting pitcher, this was a way for me to get them both in.
Get them both in. Yeah, that makes sense.
Again, I couldn't get over some of the numbers that Walsh had, and I went back. I know it's a different era and everything, but looking at where they ranked in the league, I took a deep dive into it. I couldn't ignore some of those Walsh numbers. I went there. And the last one, again, I had all these other ones to go with. I also went with Paulie.
Nice. Yeah, I think again, when you put them all together, and it's like, what Konerko meant to a decade of White Sox baseball and a team that won the World Series, you can't take that away. And while Fox was great, and Aparicio was great, Minoso was great, right? Like those guys didn't win. And so I think that's something that, and even when you look at some of the great pitchers, right, they didn't win. So, not that Appling and Fox were won the World Series. I can't even remember Luke Appling didn't win one either, did he?
No.
Not with the White Sox. But I mean, their stats put them in there, right? And history with the team put him in there. And Konerko, while his stats may be somewhat lesser than other people, when you really do a deeper dive and you're like, this guy was, he was the heart and soul of a team that won a World Series, and he defined that team for 10 plus seasons.
And again, Kirk and I, we've talked about, fan favorite. There's a lot of people, like there was Burley on that team, Frank and the team, you had a lot of people that were like, favorites of people. Not maybe not people didn't love Frank, but Paulie to me was the one that kind of defined the generation. And especially when I was already considering him anyhow, but then my last thing was going back and looking at his numbers a little more closely. I just didn't realize his numbers were as good as they were. Again, he was also, that was an era of offensive explosion. So those numbers are somewhat tanked, but again, he still put them up. Well,
and he put him up, and he's one of the guys, for the most part that would, you look at Konerko and Thomas. What stands out about them? They were clean players in an era when there wasn't a lot of that,
Yeah, Fox was also like in his day was, a fan favorite. Minosa too. Minosa, I really wanted to put in here because people loved him. And again, good guy, but like his numbers just I couldn't put his numbers up to some of the other ones. Even though he had really good numbers and he's a Hall of Famer, I know Paulie's probably not getting in the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't imagine, but I don't know. After looking at there was a conversation I had earlier, which I totally dismissed on the Reds episode about Joey Votto, another guy I don't like. And I was like, you're crazy. Cause somebody put Joey Votto on the Reds Rushmore. And maybe I did too, but it was like the greatest Red of all time or whatever. His numbers are really, really good. Much better than I thought. Like every conversation I had, I compared him to first baseman of his generation. He was in the top 3. And I compared him to all first basemen in the history of baseball. And there's not one list I came up with that he wasn't in the top 10. So I was like, that was.
But Joey Votto doesn't get on there, right? You got Bent, Morgan, Seaver, Rose, right? Before and those guys are all on one team. So before you even get
that's I think Scott had Votto on instead of Morgan. That's what he had. Yeah, he had Scott over Morgan is what the controversy was. And I told him he was crazy. But again, looking at the numbers, it's a lot better than I thought. But that's again, this is a deep team. Let's move on to the last one. Which is a no-brainer, I think, right?
Yeah, we're going with Frank Thomas again.
Yeah, that's not the right one. Where's it? I have him here somewhere. I don't know what I did with him. There we go. Frank Thomas. I'm thinking I need to move this segment first in some teams because there's some teams that are just absolutely obvious.
It's anticlimactic.
It's anticlimactic. So this one, the Indians one, was Bob Feller. I need to move this segment, but yeah. Again, I think it's the person that people think of most when these, think about the White Sox. But this was a fun one for me to do because, again, I've been to a lot of games, but going through some of their numbers, which I've never really done with the White Sox, just kind of watched, and how deep the organization has been.
Yeah, Jay, I want to thank you for inviting me. It was fun, right? To kind of think it through. I have, obviously been a fan my whole life. And so some of these guys I didn't see play, but, names that you've just always knew. But it was fun to do the work and, certainly fun to think about all the different games that I've been to over the years. And so many good memories.
Yeah. So many good memories. And again, I thank you for coming on the show and willing to come on the show. And, after we haven't talked in so many years and your friendship over the years has meant a lot to me. That's why I targeted you for this show. We have a lot of great memories together. And after what I've been through the last year, I just wanted to reach out and thank the people, including yourself, and just say how much our times together meant to me. And hopefully our journeys aren't over together.
Yeah. So when do we do the podcast when we talk about all the outings to
That's an after
McGee's
hours
and Griffin's and
that's what I couldn't remember the name of that bar, Griffin's. So there was Emmett's, right? There's Emmett's, and Griffin's was the other bar.
Right.
That was the one over on in like Greektown, north of Greektown, right?
No. That was Dugan.
That was by the firehouse, right? Griffins was by
Yeah,
the
yeah. Griffins was the one in
Griffin.
Sioux Firehouse.
Dugan's was the other one. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
There's so many. That's another show. We'll definitely do a show of that some other time.
Absolutely.
But, all right, Bobby, I'm going to let you go. Again, thanks again. Definitely when I'm in Chicago next time. I'm not sure. It'll probably in the next couple months, but I'll definitely reach out because I'm up in that area. I'm up in the Park Ridge area.
Yeah, we have to do that, and I think it would merit an outing to a baseball game.
I think we're going to make that happen. I think that's what needs to happen. All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.
Good luck with the shows. It was a blast, and your pastor and the professor show as well. I hope things go where you want them to. But thanks, Jay. This was awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate you being on. All right, Bob. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.